Hey everyone, it's Petticoat from Daydream Nation, and look who's back to the channel, Joe B. How are you, mate?
I'm doing well. It's great to see you.
Good to have you back on the channel.
Yes.
I invited Joe onto the channel to talk about John Sykes. So we got some bad news. I think it was about 5-6 weeks ago that John sadly passed away. And the conjecture is, Joe, that he actually passed away probably at the end of last year, but the news finally came out. And
Right.
I thought it was probably long overdue that we have a bit of a chat and maybe pick our 5 favorite John Sykes moments, whether it's a solo, whether it's a song. So much to cover. Got Whitesnake, you've got Thin Lizzy, Blue Murder, and John Solo. So
Yes.
can you tell me the first time, before we get into the list, you actually heard John Sykes, a solo
Yeah,
or a moment?
it was Tigers of Pantang. So it's very strange. I always try to figure out the timeline, how I really got into the new wave of British heavy metal. I know it was through finding about Motorhead by chance and Def Leppard and then Iron Maiden. But Tigers of Pantang were on one of those albums. But when Spellbound came out, right, I think that was the first time he was on. And we were like, okay, this guitar player is on a different level. And then we were getting Kerrang! Magazine. So we were reading about this new hot guitarist. And honestly, Peter, he was up there. Like it was like Eddie Van Halen, Randy Rhoads, and John Sykes. As soon as we heard him, he was on that level as far as a shredder. So yeah, right off the bat with when he had Tigers of Pantang, we heard him on the album. We were hooked.
So Tigers of Pantang was the first time you heard him. So, and that would have been right in the day, or just after he left the Tigers of Pantang?
No, right in the day when it was released, because we had the first. I believe he wasn't on the first album. I'm getting spotty with the timeline, but he was. They were Tigers of Pantang was on one of those compilations that we would get, like Metal for Mothers or something, and then we found out through Kerrang! That they got this new hotshot guitar player, and then it was after that it was like, okay, this band is great, and this guitar player is next level.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. For me, it was Whitesnake slided in the US remix. So word came out that the band had changed and Sykes was in. Briefly, it was with Mel Galley. Mel Galley had an injury, and then it was stripped down to one guitarist. Lord was out. They had the Rock and Rio, and then nothing from Whitesnake for a considerable period of time. And then 87 came out, and different look. David had the blonde locks, different sound, and what a juggernaut that was. But definitely around the Slide It In US remix, so that was the first time I heard Sykes.
I was lucky enough to see him live with John Sykes. They actually opened up for Quiet Riot, and we saw him in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. It's actually the last time I've gotten into a fist fight, too. I got kicked out after the show. My friends started the fight, and I finished it. But so we got kicked out for Quiet Riot, which was fine. But we were like right there for John Sykes playing with Coverdale. And thinking back to it, what a momentous occasion. Because when the Whitesnake album actually came out, I wasn't aware of all the drama that led to the breakup of the band and him getting a new band and everything. But I was extremely angry that he wasn't getting acknowledged for writing that album and playing on that album. Everybody thought it was Rudy Sarzo and Adrian Vandenberg and it just became about David Coverdale and Tawny Katane, basically. And the music was all of a sudden in the background. But that's a phenomenal album.
Yeah. When you saw Whitesnake live, did you think that, wow, this is something special? This band's going to make it?
Yeah, it was, especially because it was John Sykes. Now, we were also big Thin Lizzy fans, and we loved the Renegade album. And then the follow-up to that was Thunder and Lightning. And then through reading Kerrang, we found out that all of a sudden Phil Lynott got John Sykes in the band. And that album ripped. It's just great. so we were excited about that. But Thin Lizzy, we were hoping, and they never came back to the States. And then Phil had his problems and passed away, unfortunately. But I actually saw John Sykes's version of Thin Lizzy, though, in Texas, which was pretty kick-ass. That was in the mid-2000s. And that was a lot of fun. The playlist was great. But, yeah, seeing Whitesnake at that time, they blew away Quiet Riot. I really didn't get to see Quiet Riot because I was kicked out of the venue. But, yeah, it was, like I said, we had him up there. We had him up there with Randy Rhoads, who had passed away. He was up there as a shredder with Eddie Van Halen. He was on that top level for sure.
Good stuff. All right. Well, why don't we get stuck into it, and we'll just pick 5 classic John Sykes moments each. Folks, this is not necessarily ranked. It's just 5 songs that you should hear if you want to hear the mastery and genius of John Sykes. So what's the first song or first moment you want to highlight, Joe?
Well, I want to go with each era, but honestly, John's solo material really didn't pull me in that much. So I don't think I'm going to include him. So my number 5 is going to be the US version of Slide It In. And it was so bizarre because we had it, we were such metalheads. We had the UK version, and then the US version comes out and we hear that John Sykes is just doing these fills and it sounds different. Now I don't even know if you could. I've searched, I've scoured online. It's on YouTube, of course, but I don't think it's on iTunes or Spotify. I think Coverdale put the original versions out there, and you can't get the John Sykes version. But I'm going to go with Slow and Easy because he has those fills in there that just are so John Sykes and what he does with his guitar sounds. So that's going to be my number 5. Plus, I saw him live. That's the only. I've seen him live 3 times. We'll get into that, but that was the first time I saw him live, and the only time I saw him live with Whitesnake.
Good stuff. I'm going to go with Thin Lizzy off Thunder and Lightning, and the song is Cold Sweat. I think that is the best song on the album. Everything on that album is really amped up. So a lot of people criticize it because it was Thin Lizzy, but more metallic. And, I've got my reservations on it, but this song shows John Sykes the mastery over the fretboard. Like, it's a fairly straightforward riff, but 1 minute 13 in, he goes bonkers, Joe.
Yeah,
it absolutely goes off on a tangent, and he's just doing this wild guitar solo. The finger tapping, the squeal, the pick squeals. It's got all the elements that we love of John Sykes, and it's just a fun song. And you can feel that Phil Lynnett's having a ball.
Yes. And apparently they got along really well. And it also showed when John would wound up doing the Thin Lizzy thing for a couple of years. Yeah.
I think he felt most comfortable in Thin Lizzy. I really do. I think John's heart belonged in Thin Lizzy.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, they'll be in my picks. It's coming.
Yep. Okay, what's your number 4?
Hellbound by Tigers of Pantang. So this is when we first really heard him, and he really just rips on it. And we were like, okay, the guys in Kerrang are right. This is the new hot guitarist. Just a great song. It's a really good album. The next album is a little slower, more commercial, but it's a great album, and he has some great leads on it. But Hellbound is just rip roaring, new wave of British heavy metal with a next level guitar player. And like I said, that's when we heard that, we elevated him. He was on the top level of guitarists.
Were those albums easy to get in the States, or were they?
No, so it was all import, but luckily in Chicago we had a couple record stores, Rose Records. We knew the manager there, and he was a huge metalhead, and he's out there. His name's Jim Salaby, and he was awesome. And then there was Rolling Stone. Rolling Stone's still there, but Rolling Stone was the mecca. But they got everything. I mean, and they had the import section, and you knew it. And they had Kerrang too. Both these stores sold Kerrang, and it came out every 2 weeks. So we knew what to get. We knew what we were looking for. We would go, we'd get paid from our job, go on Friday or Saturday and go, spend a couple hours looking at stuff. And we'd either read about these bands like Tigers of Pantang, or we'd say, hey, this is a kick-ass album cover. This looks pretty heavy. We either go by, one of those two routes, and that's how we did it. But it was all import.
I love that magazine, Joe, the Kerrang magazine. I love going to the newsagent and every week picking up my copy of Kerrang. And in Australia, we'd always get it a little bit later. It'd be like 6 weeks out because, not being in the UK and the travel time. But I always loved reading the articles and, following different writers like Malcolm Dome and all those, they really lived the life.
Definitely. And it was great because they covered so many different bands. They had the Southern rock in there. They would have Journey in there, and they all put it together. It was all great rock and roll. And honestly, at that period, that's how we found out. We found out more about Kiss through Kerrang because Kiss was dead in the water in the States at the time. So we found out more through fanzines and Kerrang about Kiss as well. But yeah, that was a great magazine.
Yeah.
Opened up a whole new world musically for us.
Loved it to death.
Yeah.
All right. My number 4 is off Blue Murder and Valley of the Kings. I think it's the epic track. I think this is the signature piece. Probably they shouldn't have released this song as the first single because the album died in the water. It probably needed something a little bit more commercial to get, sell more units. But I never get sick of this song. It's got the thunderous drums of Carmine Appice, Tony Franklin, the fretless monster, and then the wonderful John Sykes. And he's just putting all these techniques out, It's kind of what Martin Popoff calls the Egypto chords. It all comes back to Kashmir and you've got Stargazer, but this is the song that I think John really enjoys playing, the really epic song. Towards the end, where they're all harmonizing, oh man, I get the hairs on the back of my head just go up on end. I love it. It's a truly epic song on a really good album, Blue Murder. Do you like this song?
Yeah. Oh, I saw Blue Murder live. It was a strange bill. It was King's X, Blue Murder, and Billy Squier. But it was a great show, and I think Blue Murder went on second. I think King's X was first. Yeah, but that's
a good lineup.
It's going to make my list.
It's a strange lineup. It's a good lineup, but it's kind of eclectic. It's eclectic, but. And did the audience really groove on all three, or was it a little bit sort of you had different pockets of fans?
Oh no, I think it was mostly everyone was there to see Blue Murder. Billy Squier was kind of on the downslope, and we left. We watched a couple songs. I've seen Billy Squier more. He opened up for everybody, but and it was at the Vic Theater, I believe, in Chicago. So there weren't many shows there, but it was a great venue to see a show. I'm gonna go with Blue Murder next as well. My number 2, I'm gonna say for Thin Lizzy, but I'm gonna go with Jelly Roll. It's just I love the acoustic guitar is so cool, so difficult, so weird sounding. I think it's a different tuning. The video is it's the video. It's 80, late 80s, early 90s. He's in the rain and he's good looking and he's got the girl but it's a cool song and then so it starts out acoustic and then at the end when he goes Love Will Break Your Heart and then he just goes in the full John Sykes and it's just an awesome song. But you can't go wrong with it. Your pick is great. The whole album is great. Valley of the Kings obviously is awesome. But Jelly Roll is just so unique to me. That's why I picked it because it starts out with that cool acoustic part and it ends with classic John Sykes lead guitar work.
Yeah, I did a whole show with a panel on Blue Murder a couple of years ago, and it still gets clicks to this very day. And we did an analysis of why the album tanked and should have done better, and a lot of people put their theories forward. Look, I still think it's a head scratch. It should have done a lot better. Maybe
Harmon Apiece. I mean, I've seen interviews, and he's been with everybody, and he started with, back in the 60s, and he'll talk forever about how much he loved that band. It was a great band. Tony Franklin on bass. I mean, come on. Yeah.
Yeah, I maybe it was just not the right time.
Right.
Maybe if it came out a year or two earlier. I can't help but think, was this the album that would have been the logical follow-up to 1987 with Coverdale singing instead of Slip of the Tongue? What do you think?
I think that's a good assessment there. Yeah. And I still, now that we're doing this show, I still get ticked off that he still doesn't get his just due for that album. And now the album is kind of looked at as, it got too popular, but it's a great album. But we'll get to that.
It still sells, mate. It still sells.
I know.
And I mean, I think it's diamond certification in America, 10 mil.
Yes.
And it's phenomenal. My next song is going to be Billy off Blue Murder. I like the different change of pace. It's a little bit funky. There's different guitar textures. It's really atmospheric. A lot of people think, oh, look, Sykes has just got one type of guitar playing, but he could mix it up a little bit. He could play funk. He could play atmospheric type of guitar. I just love, this song. I just think if this was the sort of material or direction he was going to take Whitesnake, it would have been really interesting to see Coverdale singing a song like Billy. Yeah. A bit more broader, just expanding the musical palette,
It's interesting. When I saw Blue Murder, he played Still of the Night and I think one or two other songs off that album. But he definitely played Still of the Night. It might have been his encore. It might have been their encore. But yeah.
Yeah, I just like this song. I just think it's got a different sort of texture. It's got a little bit more funk. And I think it's a highlight of the album. All right, mate, what's your next one?
So you took Cold Sweat, right? From Thunder and Lightning?
Yes, I did.
Yeah, I'm going to go with This Is the One, just because it's got such a unique rhythm to it. And the trade-off between Scott Gorham and John Sykes is pretty awesome. And it almost it almost sounds like a competition where you have John Sykes is the new version, the hot, shredder guitarist, and Scott Gorham's trying to keep up with him. And he does a pretty good job. It works. There's two unique guitar sounds there. And, Thin Lizzy's famous for their dual guitar work. I just think it's such a cool song. It's such a unique song. It's probably, Thin Lizzy has a lot of unique songs, so I can't say. But I just love that beat is so cool. But the trade leads are great, and you see how you got a 70s guitar hero competing with the hot new flashy guitarist that they just got. And I just really love this song.
Yeah, look, this album did really well in the UK, went top 10, and it probably, the sky's the limit if they did some more albums. However, DC kept on throwing more money at John, and it got, I think John asked for something ridiculous. It was like a 7-figure sum, and Phil said, take it. So
yeah,
I think John's heart belonged in Thin Lizzy, even though, the money was thrown at him.
Yeah, but Phil, Phil wasn't long for the world at this time. I heard an interview, I don't know, 10 some years ago with Scott Gorham, and he said, Phil came up to him one time and he pulled his sunglasses down. He said his eyes were dark yellow from the hepatitis and disease and everything. And he said he was pretty much gone by at that point. So it's pretty tragic. But man, that band, I know. There's a John Sykes in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame that's not very popular. I don't even want to pay attention to it. There's another band. What a maverick front, unique band. And Phil was such a unique rock star. Even Bono said, Bono, the biggest Irish band, possibly one of the biggest rock bands of all time, said that Phil Lynott was inspiration to him. So, yeah, it's a shame that they don't get their just due because Boys Are Back in Town, sometimes Jailbreak, but man, they had some awesome stuff out there. And Thunder and Lightning was a great album. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. My next pick is off the 1987 album, and it's Crying in the Rain. I think John's guitar work on this is just outwardly. I like the original version with Bernie Marsden and Mick Moody, and it's a little bit more bluesy, darker. But this one, John takes it into his world, and it's just a guitar hero virtuoso performance. Especially, he just kind of builds up steam in that guitar solo. When I heard this for the first time, I thought, wow, this packs a punch. And you've got Ainsley Dunbar, he is pounding the skins. He's giving it his all. They really struggled to find a drummer. They were going through 200 drummers. They couldn't find anyone. And somebody said, Ainsley Dunbar, ex of Journey, been around the track for a long time. His drumming on this album is phenomenal,
Yes, I know. Yeah, I know. So is the next one my number one? Yeah, I'm going to go with Still of the Night. I don't care. It's a friggin' great riff and it's a great song. And if you back off of it for a little bit and then listen to it with fresh ears, you realize what an amazing riff. The guitar work, it's awesome. It's a great song. It's a great riff. It has. I mean, does it have a little Zeppelin to it? Yeah, but what's wrong with that, right? But it's a masterpiece. It's an absolute masterpiece that he wrote. And
I agree with you. It's my number one as well. It's an absolute game. It's a game changer. And I think when this came out, a lot of folk in the Sunset Strip and LA just their ears pricked up and go, wow, what is this? And the way this album was marketed was perfect. You had Still of the Night as the first single, which shows, hey, Coverdale's back, Sykes, guitar explosion. Then they had Here I Go Again, the number one hit, and then you had the ballad. So hit them with the heavy stuff, do the power ballad, and then do the ballad, and you're on to 7 million copies, onto diamond certification right now. But getting back to this, the riff is powerful. They sort of say it's kind of loosely based on Jailhouse Rock. I'm not quite sure. When I never get sick of this song, Joe. Seriously, I must play this song 12 times a year, and I never, ever, ever get sick of this song. Do you?
No. Again, we did an episode, a year or two ago about albums that were overplayed but still stand up. And I think I should have included this album in hindsight, because it's still fresh. And now that John has passed away, I revisited all of his catalog and and you listen to this song and I'm like, this is like the perfect song.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's definitely the high point from a guitar perspective for Sykes. That solo is just unbelievable. And he's using all his techniques and it takes you in directions, like even the key changes, it takes you into an emotional, there's some emotional key changes in that really sort of, you don't expect that you go in that sort of direction. And okay, they borrow Zeppelin, so what? So many artists do, but it refines it and it modernizes it. And I tell you, folks, my only quibble is the 87. It's got the gated drums and it's got a lot of reverb and all that sort of stuff. The version came out of, they've just done a remix version on Whitesnake's Greatest Hits, and they've removed the reverb, and it sounds fucking fantastic.
Yeah.
It's great.
Yeah.
What it should have sounded, organic without the bells and whistles.
Yeah. So, at the time, I didn't realize, now you read back all the tension and conflict that occurred while recording this album and how long it took. And he didn't realize that Coverdale was, he went in for sinus surgery, and then but at the time I was like livid. That John Sykes wasn't getting his due. And I remember, so, I go to see Whitesnake in 1984, open up for Quiet Riot. Then 3 years later, they're selling out 2-3 nights in Chicago. And my sister and her friend wants to go with my buddy and I, to see Whitesnake. Go figure. And then you see the video, and it's none of the people they're playing. And I'm trying to, I'm yelling at the top of my lungs, these aren't the guys that actually play the song, but no one's listening. No one cares. But yeah, it's unfortunate he didn't really get his just due. And I don't know if he ever will, because it all became, for the general public out there, it was all about Coverdale, it was all about the videos. And then, all the guys on the video that you think they're the ones that are playing on the album. And unfortunately, he doesn't have he should have the Eddie Van Halen. He should be close to it to have that type of, reputation where he's more of a household name.
Yeah, I don't think anyone will ever find out the true story, because there's all different perspectives. It's like one of those movies. It depends who you talk to. There's a different sort of angle to the story. But one thing's for sure, those two were lightning in a bottle. I think it was a short-lived relationship. It was passionate, and they produced some great art, but it was never built to last, because you got two alpha males and they just sort of clashed. It was like Gillan and Blackmore, Coverdale and Sykes. They created great music, but it just wasn't meant to be. And I think Sykes was the only one that probably eyeballed Coverdale and told him how it is. Mate, that's shit. He'd be a lot of, there are some rock stars that have a lot of yes people around them, but I think he was one of the few that just probably toe to toe would look him in the eye and go, mate, that's crap.
And as you know, I'm always fascinated on the financial side of things. And I don't know how true this is, but David Coverdale was like millions of dollars in debt before he made this album.
100%. He was couch surfing.
That's crazy.
Couch surfing. Yes.
Yeah, I know.
And when he apparently went on a date with Tawny Katane, he had to borrow from a mate some money to take her to this cafe.
I'm sure he regrets that. So I actually there's times we get done with episodes and I'm like, man, I should have mentioned, like we did the Motley Crue. I didn't tell you that I sat next to Billy Corgan at a show and we were talking about Smashing Pumpkins. I actually was in Los Angeles at Tower Records when it was still open. So this is maybe 2000, I don't know, 5, 6, 7 on Sunset Strip. And I looked next to me and David Coverdale's looking through the records. And I'm like, what? Holy shit. Yeah. And no one knew who it was. It was kind of like he didn't have his resurgence yet. And, he just was there. It was LA and he's in the record store and he was with a beautiful woman. It wasn't Tawny Katane. He'll be the first to admit that was one of his biggest mistakes, marrying her. She was quite a character. But yeah, I ran into him at Tower Records and I didn't bother him. I'm like, holy cow, it's David Coverdale. And I've seen John Sykes live 3 times. So I saw him with Whitesnake at that show, opening up for Quiet Riot. I saw him with Blue Murder. And then he did that Thin Lizzy thing, which I thought was awesome. He sounded a lot like Phil. And I thought the set list was amazing. Just the fact alone that they had bad reputation, that pick scrape, it is one of the greatest things ever. So that was a cool show.
Yeah. Look, I really think that the failure of Blue Murder he took it really to heart. He was not quite the same. I think he was really putting everything into that Blue Murder, and I think it was a disappointment to him.
That's why it was difficult for me. It was difficult for me to pick any of his solo material because none of it really stood out for me, and it still doesn't. So I don't know what happened. Maybe that's just jaded. I don't know, but I listened to it extensively for this episode, and I'm like, I can't put any of those songs in my top 5. Maybe some of your listeners will be angry with me about saying that, but
it is. Look, it is what it is. But
yeah,
I think his heart belonged in Thin Lizzy, but artistically, his highlight was definitely with Whitesnake. And as I said, it was a brief relationship, and it was passionate, but it just wasn't built to last. So there you go. Thank you so much, Joe. It's a pleasure to have you on the show. We're going to do more in 2025.
Yes.
And we've got to do that show on the financial side, because I know you've got an interest on the financial side of rock stardom and how things are not, as they seem. Like there's a lot of rock stars in the 80s that are living in caravans and on the skids, and people that you may think that are, living the high life are not actually living the high life and being ripped off. So I think there's a whole episode we could do on that.
Everyone from Ted Nugent, who is clean as a whistle, to Aerosmith, even Joe Perry and Steven Tyler. There was the whole, we all went up our nose. And Lieber Krebs ripped those guys off. Yeah, they did tons of drugs, but still. And Sabbath and all those guys, But I would love to do an episode. We could talk about Sharon Osbourne alone for an hour.
We might get a few writs. I'll get a few writs there, mate. It's always a pleasure.
Thank you for being such a great friend. I know we're miles and miles apart, but it's great to hear from you. Great to talk to you and chat. And
absolute pleasure. Pleasure. There'll be more folks. There'll be more Joe B this year. Please tell us what your favorite John Sykes songs are, guitar solos, albums. We love reading your comments. Please like and subscribe to Rock Daydream Nation. And one thing's for sure, we'll be doing a show very soon. All the best and cheers.